She hadn't seen him in 10 years, not since the flood tore them apart, not since the jungle swallowed her whole and left him screaming at the edge of a rising river. But now, as her trembling legs gave out and her calf pressed against her for warmth, her eyes locked with his through dust and time, and something inside her remembered not with thought, but with bone and blood, and the hush that fell wasn't quiet. It was deafening, a storm without wind, a scream without sound, because the boy she lost had become a man, and the girl she once was had never stopped waiting. And in that impossible moment, across the years, pain and memory collided, and nothing, not silence, not distance, not the wild, could unmake the bond that had never broken. Each morning, Kiran rose before the village stirred, walking the same narrow path past the rusted gate, past the edge of the field to where the jungle reached out like a question he never answered. He carried a small cloth bag, not because he needed it, but because once long ago it held bananas, small yellow ones she used to love. He didn't speak much anymore, but sometimes his lips moved without sound, shaping her name into the wind. He never stayed long, just stood beneath the mango tree, where the bark was worn smooth, where her shadow used to fall. He would press his palm against it as if memory could rise through skin and muscle and bone, and as the sun climbed and the village noise crept in, he'd turn back, eyes dry, but heavy breath, steady, but not whole inside him. Something paced slowly, endlessly, like a creature that had once known freedom, and now only remembered it in dreams. And meanwhile, deep in the forest, the young elephant mother moved through her days with quiet purpose, grazing, guiding, guarding her calf. But sometimes when the trees grew too still, or a scent in the wind caught her unaware, she would pause, lift her head, and stand motionless, trunk, swaying slightly, not from habit, but from a silence. She could not name a pull, not to the present, but to something left behind, something that lived not in thought, but in absence. And the calf never noticed the flicker in her gaze, the way she watched the horizon, like it might one day give something back that it had taken so long ago. It happened fast too, fast for thought, too loud for reason. The sky cracked open and the river rose with a rage no child could understand. The trees bent and the ground vanished beneath his feet, and all he could hear was the terrified trumpet that split the air like something breaking forever. Tara's small form had slipped from his grip, pulled by current, by panic, by fate. And in that moment, the world narrowed into sound and water, and her eyes wide with fear as she disappeared into the churning dark. He ran, he screamed, he called until his voice turned raw. But she didn't come back. Not then, not ever. And when strong arms finally held him back from the river's edge, he collapsed. Not from exhaustion, but from a hole opening inside him too wide to fill the days. After were made of silence, he sat on the porch, staring at the tree where she used to wait. Watched the fields turn green, then brown, then green again. But colour meant nothing anymore. Time passed in slow, aching circles. People stopped asking. He stopped answering, and even as his body grew older, taller, stronger, his gaze stayed low, as if memory lived in the dirt and not in the sky. He learned to speak softly, to look busy, to smile when needed, but nothing ever touched the place where she used to be. Tara, too, had changed. She had wandered far from the flood, following scents and shadows until the jungle swallowed her completely, and she learned to survive. Not with trust, but with distance, her eyes sharper, her movements cautious, her world quiet. She no longer called out, not even in sleep. The herd she found accepted her, but she never pressed too close, never leaned into warmth. The calf she would one day carry became the only thing she let near. And even then, there were nights when she turned away from his breath and stared into the trees, not out of fear but memory. Years passed, like leaves drifting down, forgotten by the wind, and in both of them silence took root. Not peace, not healing, but the kind of silence that grows heavy with everything unsaid, everything unfound, everything undone. Let me pause here for just a moment and ask you, where are you listening from right now? Have you ever experienced something like this in your life? A moment when someone, maybe a person, maybe even an animal, remembered you after years apart. That quiet shock of being seen again, after thinking you'd been forgotten. If stories like this speak to something in your heart, make sure to follow. There's so much more ahead, and I'd love for you to be part of it. It started with a photo, blurry and distant, taken by a ranger at dusk. Just a collapsed elephant and a calf standing beside her, barely visible through the trees. But something in the shape of her back, the tilt of her head, the way her trunk curled inward, made Kieran's breath catch, and then came the report. Brief clinical words on a clipboard: female elephant lying in river, signs of exhaustion, protective behavior toward calf, possible trauma, and something cracked open inside him, not loud, not clean, but slow like ice breaking beneath thin weight. He stared at the image again and again, heart pounding, not from certainty, but from the terrifying nearness of possibility. What if it was her? What if he was wrong? What if he wasn't? And the question rose louder, than logic, louder than fear. Could she still remember him? After everything, could she have survived all those years? And if she had, she also waited somewhere in the stillness. Like he had, he packed his gear, with hands that shook not from cold, but from memory. And when the truck pulled away from the compound toward the forest, he stared out the window, not seeing trees but echoes of laughter under mango leaves, the weight of her trunk resting in his palm, her baby footsteps following close behind. And yet underneath it all came the voice he tried to silence. What if she doesn't know you? What if it's just an elephant? Just coincidence, just hope, pretending to be truth? He said nothing to the team, but as they walked the narrow trail down to the water, something inside him rose to meet the air like a breath long held, like a name whispered only in sleep. And when he saw her crumpled in the current, legs shaking, flanks rising with effort, something ancient slammed into his chest. She turned her head slowly, eyes locking onto his, and for a moment the world fell away. No team, no river, no years, just the unbearable stillness of recognition trembling between them. And when her trunk reached out, trembling and slow, brushing the air toward him, he stepped forward, not as a responder, not as a man, but as the boy who had never stopped waiting, and said her name like a prayer that never stopped burning: Tara. At first, it was just a shape in the water, still and heavy, the kind of stillness that follows, too much pain and not enough time. Then her ear twitched just slightly, and her eyes found his, and for a moment, nothing moved, not the leaves, not the air, not even his breath. They stared at each other as if through glass, as if through years, and something passed between them, not spoken, not understood, just known. Her eyes were different now, older, harder. But there beneath the wear of survival was something soft, something unfinished. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully. The way you move toward a dream. You're afraid to wake from, and still she didn't move. Her calf pressed close to her side, watching with wary eyes, and Kieran crouched, not reaching, not speaking, just being. And the wind shifted, bringing with it the scent of the river and damp bark, and something else, something like crushed mango and dust and childhood. And she blinked slowly, then again, and her trunk lifted almost imperceptibly, trembling in the air like a question. And that was when it happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just a shift, a single, invisible thread pulled taut, then slack, and her trunk reached him, not fast, not certain, but real. And when it brushed the back of his hand, a sound escaped him, low and broken, because it was her, not a hope, not a ghost, not a story. He told himself on long walks it was Tara, and she remembered not in words, but in weight and warmth, and the way her trunk curled slightly at the end, just like it used to. He pressed his hand into hers, and the years dissolved the floods, the silence, The searching all fell away, until it was only this, the boy and the elephant, the memory and the living proof. And in that stillness, he didn't need to speak, because she had answered the question his heart had asked 1,000 times she had not forgotten, and neither had he. In the soft hush of morning before the heat rose and the jungle stirred, Kieran sat beside her again, not speaking, not needing to. The way her ears twitched at his breathing, the way her calf slowly stepped closer each day, inch by inch. Trunk sniffing the edge of his shirt. It all spoke louder than words. The fear in her body began to loosen, not all at once, but in moments small and true, when she leaned into his hand without flinching, when she dozed with her calf under the shade, and didn't wake at the sound of boots or voices. He brought her fruit the way he used to, peeled slowly, offered with open palms, and she took it. Now not in hunger, but in trust. He laughed once low and surprised when the calf nudged his back, trying to reach the basket, and Tara turned, her head toward the sound, her eyes soft and knowing, like she remembered how that laugh used to fill the forest when he was small. They began walking again, just short steps along the riverbank, her side brushing his shoulder gently like it used to when she'd match his pace. His pain didn't vanish, but it changed. It stopped being a sharp thing and became a space where love had lived and still lived, where loss didn't mean absence, but transformation. The silence between them was different now, not heavy, not hollow, but full of everything they'd once been and everything they might still become. And as the days stretched on, under wide skies and rustling leaves, Kieran no longer looked back, searching for what he'd lost. Instead, he looked forward toward the life that had waited for him. And in the quiet hum of the jungle, where breath and memory moved like wind, something broken was mending, not quickly, not perfectly, but honestly. And that was enough, because some bonds are not made by time, but by truth. And some love is not forgotten, only waiting for the moment it is seen again. And this was that moment. Some bonds do not speak. They breathe. They wait. Through storms and silence, through years that forget the sound of a name, they remain. What was once lost was never truly gone, only hidden, carried in the quiet corners of a heart that never stopped listening. And when the moment finally comes, when eyes meet and memory stirs, something soft and certain returns, not loudly, not all at once, but deeply. Because true connection doesn't vanish, it endures. It becomes the light that finds you when you think you've gone too far, and it says, without a word, you were never alone.